Why don't we delve a little bit into some CMLL, some AEW. A little bit of older news, but again, I haven't been around, and I want to be able to talk about this because we had already been talking about this. So I want to be able to I got to come full circle on this. On a recent update on Lucha Blog, here, let me pull it. It's on the July 18, 2025 edition of Lucha Blog. Cubs fan goes over the rumors that were going around that Hechicero had signed a dual contract with AEW and CMLL. And let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to read directly the news here from the horse's mouth here, the horse being Cubs fan. I'm not calling Cubs fan an actual horse. Thursday, in the AEW official, by the way, not actually official, Reddit forum, a user posted that Hechicero had signed an AEW contract. That user appears to have some valuable contacts in AEW based on previous reports, and I believe he's correct on this story as well. Multiple people had told me that Hechicero was going to sign with AEW. The target was to be done the same week as Grand Slam Mexico, but there was a holdup. I'm unsure why it was delayed. I prefer not to comment on these situations until the deal is finalized. Based on that report, the deal appears to be finalized. I believe Hechicero's contract with AEW would allow him to continue working with CMLL. I'm sure it was signed with CMLL's blessing. So that's very interesting. Let's continue here. There's been unhappiness in the NJPW fandom about their wrestlers signing with AEW. There's already some trepidation from CMLL fans about this Hechicero signing with AEW for similar reasons. I'm not concerned. This contract, as I understand it, allows him to continue to both work CMLL and AEW. It is not a full-time move similar to Okada or Ospreay. It's a lot easier to dip in and out of CMLL than it is New Japan Pro Wrestling. Wrestlers don't feel like part of the New Japan promotion if they're working selected shows instead of full tours. Everyone in CMLL is in and out on some shows and off some shows. Let me read that again. That was weird. That was strange, right? Everyone in CMLL is in and out on some shows and off some shows. Some people disappear for weeks at a time with no acknowledgement. Hechicero is also like most CMLL wrestlers where they have a feud for a while, but spend a lot of time wrestling miscellaneous matches. It's not going to disrupt CMLL if Hechicero has to miss shows. The travel between US and Mexico is shorter and without the big time difference. The big shows of AEW's week are currently on Wednesday and Saturday, and the big show of CMLL's week is Friday, so there's no massive conflict. So I thought that was fascinating, and it's something that we had talked about here, right? Right here, weeks ago on these very streams, this very podcast, we talked about the idea of CMLL guys coming together with AEW, with CMLL and AEW, I should say, coming together to sign guys to double contracts, kind of like what AEW has done with Konosuke Takeshita, with Kevin Knight, and we saw this as probably as very likely a very positive thing, mostly because, look, as we mentioned weeks ago, this was probably the best way for CMLL to combat the upcoming poaching of talent from TKO / WWE / AAA. That is, it's coming. And, you know, I've been talking about it for a while, and we have to just deal with this reality. Don't close your eyes and pretend it's not going to happen. At some point, particularly, I'm assuming, particularly once the AAA deal is officialized with TKO, they're going to come after CMLL talent. And like we mentioned, CMLL does not have the funds to provide proper counteroffers to whatever money TKO is going to be offering the CMLL guys. So they are at a risk to lose some guys to the other company. And when we started hearing about, then we started talking about the potential maybe for dual contracts, and we had talked about how this will probably be CMLL's best way to hang on to its talent, even though they have to share it with another promotion. I think it's ultimately better to strike this kind of deal with a partner promotion and then allow that partner promotion to use that talent, use your talent as well, as opposed to losing that talent completely and not having access to them, period. Right? Because if Hechicero were to go to AAA, he's no longer working CMLL. Like that's just how it's going to be. It's going to be a complete and utter shutdown. So I saw this go down while I was on vacation, and I wondered why it wasn't bigger news. Like, I think this is legitimately some of the biggest news to come out of pro wrestling in July, is this thing that is the idea that AEW and CMLL are hunkering down, or at least hunker down in the case of Hechicero, to give him a double contract so he can work both places. And that's the precedent. There are going to be others. Like that was my immediate thought, is like, okay, well, there are going to be other people who are going to follow suit here. AEW is going to use this experience and extend offers to other guys, and probably, other guys that we've been seeing recently on television, and on AEW television specifically. Hechicero had been, he had popped in and out of AEW TV, in the past, showing up every few months or so. But recently he had been on, it seems like every week. Every week he's either been on Dynamite or Collision or both. So you kind of felt that there was something there where you're like, well, Tony Khan must really like Hechicero, but there's got to be a little more to this. And then challenging Bandito for the Ring of Honor Championship, and I'm like, okay, there's something here. There's absolutely something here, and there you go. We get the news that he's got the double contract. So, this is overall, ultimately, this is really good news. If you're a CMLL fan and you're afraid that CMLL is going to lose all of this great talent because they won't be able to match what TKO is offering, right? These thoughts, this speculation, was only reinforced again on Lucha Blog on yesterday's edition of, or yesterday's post on Lucha Blog, where Cubs gave us a little more insight here. Talking about a Twitter user, Dr. Landrew, who is a Mexican Lucha Twitter account, who responded to the Hechicero story. He said this: as I understand it, it's not just Hechicero who signed, but also some other wrestlers have or will have a shared contract, not a shared account. That just creates legal issues, especially if the shared account is with your mother. But also have other wrestlers who have or will have a shared contract between CMLL and AEW. So that was very interesting. Cubs continues. Following the Stephanie Vaquer affair, a report, I believe was from Fightful, stated that AEW and its partners were working to prevent the same thing from happening again. It appears they've been doing that work. So that's very interesting. So we're already getting rumors that it's not just Hechicero that is being singled out here. In fact, I have some speculation, but there's something interesting here. Over the past couple of days, Mascara Dorada was asked about his match with Bandito on this week's CMLL media session. He put over Bandito strongly and discussed wanting a rematch of him in the US. Dorada was asked about what Bandito said after the match and if he'd go to AEW. Dorada shut down the idea strongly, said he's very happy in CMLL. He feels they gave him big opportunity when he had done nothing outside to deserve that, and that means a lot to him. His mother and father have always preached the importance of loyalty, and CMLL has always been loyal to him, and Dorada is equally loyal to CMLL. Now, this is again, some great news to hear in that respect, but there's nothing here keeping a guy like Mascara Dorada from jumping on the train here and getting his own dual contract with AEW. He doesn't leave CMLL, which clearly, from what he said here, he feels very indebted to, feels a strong sense of loyalty to. So, and I can dig that, right? But he won't leave the company strictly for AEW. He's not going to do that. But given the opportunity to be able to work both places, and seeing how Mascara Dorada has been on AEW television quite a bit over the past couple of months as well, maybe not as frequently as Hechicero, but he's been on TV quite a bit. I'm thinking this is a guy who might have benefited from one of these dual contracts. You want to start the speculation train, folks? You want to get on board? Choo choo. Here we go. I would say that on top of, if they're trying to lock down Dorada, a guy who is perceived as the future of CMLL, right? Might as well do what you need to do to hang on to the present of CMLL and lock down Místico as well. Why not try to do that? Místico's been on AEW television and in prominent spots on top of that. Not just like, scumming it on the mid-card. He is mid-carding, but, not in a scum place. He's feuding with MJF, who is one of the top guys of the company. In a feud that's, dribbling over into MLW on top of that, including both wrestlers' home promotions. There's a lot of stuff here going on. There's a lot of very interesting things going on here. Having him feud with MJF, purchasing the rights to his theme song so that he could have this grandiose entrance in Arena Mexico. Working to get a really cool spot on in the gauntlet match and all that. Like, you could tell that either they have something already canned, or there was a little sweetening of the pot here. It's like, look, we'll take care of you. This is what we'll do with you. And I can understand, Místico still worried about how he'd be treated on American television, considering what happened last time. And would he readily go back to WWE to begin with, considering what happened last time? Look, it's been a long while since Sin Cara, right? How much water has run under the bridge? I don't know. We have a tendency to give a lot of grief to WWE for what happened, but it's not just WWE that was the issue here. There was, Místico sort of, he was an architect of his own demise as well. They built that house together. Is he ready maybe to put a little more, to eat a little more humble pie here? I don't know. Look, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot of things that could still happen. But I think it's fair to say that CMLL and AEW are probably working very, very, very hard to lock down Místico so that he doesn't go to AAA. He's Mexico's biggest wrestling star. He is the biggest lucha libre star in all of Mexico. WWE, AAA wouldn't even be WWE doesn't care necessarily about needing to do something with him. They just don't want the other guys to have him. it's one of those. We're going back to some old-timey Vince ways of doing things where you want to stock up on everyone because you want to starve out the competition, right? That's essentially what he wanted to do. But I think that's inevitable. Like with Hechicero getting a contract, I think we're going to see more CMLL guys getting spots. I think a guy like Atlantis Jr. will also be a benefit of this. Atlantis Jr. was the Ring of Honor TV champion just very recently. Tony seems to like him. He's talented. He's a good he's a good pro wrestler. I would absolutely bring him in. Another guy that I personally would bend myself over. I know I can do that, but bend over backwards is what I tried to say to lock down and sign is Sandokan Jr. Because that's a guy that AAA and WWE would absolutely love to have. Because he's got the size. And he's got that immediate charisma. That's the kind of guy that they look at and go, oh yeah. Much more than, they look at a guy like Star Jr., they go, next. They're not looking at Neon smacking their lips, even though Neon is a tremendous pro wrestler. WWE's not looking at Neon rubbing their hands together going, here's our next big thing. But a guy like Sandokan Jr., absolutely he could. I think he's 100% on their radar. He has to be. So that's another guy I'd lock down. I think that's the core of your future for CMLL. And if AEW can benefit and help out a partner in hanging on to their stars by entering these dual contracts, I think that would be a good idea. And then that becomes a bargaining chip for AEW as well. That becomes a bargaining chip. It gives them a little more power in a sense where they can go to a wrestler and say, hey, listen, we can sign you and you can still hold on to your dates in your home promotion. You don't have to, cut everything off. You don't have to sever the bridge. You can, or sever the connection at the very least. You can still hang out with them and work with us. And I think that's a big deal. I think there are more wrestlers out there who might be interested in that kind of scenario as opposed to, leaving everything behind and pulling a Stephanie Vaquer, which again, we need to remind everyone, she did not do things the right way with CMLL, and she is persona non grata with them right now. They've erased her from history. They took down her banner in Arena Coliseo. She doesn't exist for them anymore. She went all in on her WWE dream. Good for her. But, at least now people don't feel they'll have to do that they will have some leverage here to move forward. And, at the same time, there's AEW still remains open for its talent to go wrestle in other places and whatnot. So, this talent can also benefit from working certain select indies as well, Japan is also an opportunity. See, there's a lot of good stuff here. But like Cubs pointed out, I think one of the most interesting points here is that working from the United States to Mexico is much less intensive than working from the United States to Japan. So you can hop back and forth much more easily. I'm not saying like it's a breeze. It's not like, crossing the street or whatever, but it's easier. It's easier to grab a flight and make your date on time without having to leave like 2 days in advance and then rest a day to readjust your internal clock kind of thing. That's the type of situation that you do have to live with when it comes to jumping around from North America to Japan. So it's very beneficial. And I'm glad to hear that there might be other people that are about to sign these dual contracts or have already. I think it's going to be very, very, very beneficial. And again, something that we've not really seen in modern times in professional wrestling. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out and comes together. It's hard to It's hard to see the negatives as it stands right now. It's hard to see the negatives, but you know, they'll probably rear their ugly head down the road somewhere. Very likely anyway.